Welcome to the first iteration of the Waterloo Symposium.
And I'm hoping that this develops into a tradition.
And if you look carefully at the program, you will notice it has a title, A Seriously Fun Way into the Tao. So the first quotation is from T.S. Eliot's The Four Quartets. Can't get more serious than that. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. The light refreshment is this switch from what I was talking about before to what basically became, for me, my new life. So it's like I finished teaching, but I'm still teaching, but I finished teaching out there and I started learning this thing called Tai Chi. And it was kind of like being born again. Because I had to learn again how to walk. I had to learn again about my body, about awareness in space. Going through the movements of the beginnings of learning Tai Chi. That's like the Jing stage. And you start to learn that your body wasn't what you thought it might have been. And you have to open things up that were closed up from years of maybe misuse or abuse or not use. And that takes time. It can take a long time in some cases. But that's the first stage in Tai Chi. And it really does involve playing because you have to give up the sense of your own, I can't do that. You can't worry about it. You have to let go and accept it and keep trying it. And that's the essence of play. In the second stage of this, we begin to learn something called forms. And in doing that, we begin kind of a ritual practice. Remember, I did that earlier in childhood with the Mass and stuff. And I did it when I was teaching drama because we looked at Middle Ages ritual. We go through this ritual over and over and over and over again, and suddenly we start to notice something I would call a change of energy within the body. Things are flowing. Always that's what people say about Tai Chi. You look at people doing Tai Chi, they say it flows. And that's why I think when you start to experience Chi. And in the final stage, we play and play at Tai Chi enough that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, there's moments where it's almost like it's doing it itself. And there's moments, too, where some things start to happen spontaneously. Actions may start to happen spontaneously. You may start to do forms in a different way than you ever did it before. You start to notice things about it. And I think when that's happening, you're experiencing something called Wu Wei, and you're experiencing something akin to Shen.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the ideas around the Meridian and tie that back to our practice with the Tai Chi. So how do we do that? There's three things I wanted to talk about. First one is aligning the mind and the body. And actually, the handout we had before, with the Jing, Qi, and Shen is actually useful. Come back, we'll be able to reference that. Because this is sort of a fundamental thing where if you bring the mind and body into alignment with each other, coax them into alignment, that's the starting point for building the strength of the body, building the strength of the resilience of the person, building the Qi. There's a second method I wanted to talk about, which was using the source Qi and the Yuan source point. And within all of that, those different types of Qi, there is a very special type of Qi called the source Qi. It's called, or it sometimes gets translated to original Qi, Yuan Qi. And they say, well, this is a Qi that comes, first of all, it's activated by the gate of vitality, the movement, the lower abdomen, the Tanya. With Qigong, this kind of motion. Weight transfer. The arches of the feet, you put more weight on one side, take the weight off. This same kind of motion happens also in the feet as in the hands. That gentle, relaxed tone of the body also allows things to flow. Third one still is taking the same concept and adding another dimension to it. Unfortunately, it talks about something called the Sanjiao, or the triple burner. Those three fires which help move things outwards. Because there's a whole nother aspect to the Sanjiao, this triple burner idea, which is that it's all the little nooks and crannies, all the little spaces that the source chi travels through, the chi in general, but in particular the source chi travels through. So this is like in the analogy of the water cycle, we have the ocean, and then the water travels, evaporates and travels up, and then the prevailing winds take it over towards the hills. So that kind of motion is the motion of the Sanjiao.
First of all, I'll just read what this is. As Jill said, it's a 4 points of the compass mini set based on the Yang style grass bird's tail section of the Tai Chi set. And that goes through several different styles of Taijiquan. We all know that. This mini set can be performed in a very small space, like this. And I want you to take this with you and share it. Get back to the play. We share what we know with others and then let them develop their personality into what they're doing. And so I thought, this is really good, but how can we use this for good, for healing? And then I realized everything in nature that is powerful moves in circles. Water does not just go in and out, all right? It goes in a nice flow. And so when we're thinking about our Tai Chi or any martial art, really, we need to think about that flow, the ebb and flow. Okay, so as usual, we start with sinking your chi. And then right away, oh, that feels so good, doesn't it? Don't you just love moving grass bird's tail? Right. 90 degrees to your right. And this pattern is going to go all the way through. And now we're going to go around to the left, 180 degrees. And that's going to repeat. Well, I told you didn't have to move.
Where did it come from? Tai Chi sword, mostly Yang sword. Well, you can say, of course, it came from Yang sword, it came from the Yang family, right? Yes, to some extent. But at the same time, it came from people like this. From the Taoist monks. The Taoist monks and priests, both priests and monks, right? Long before the rise of Tai Chi, they created a very effective system of martial arts, which became known as Wudang or Wudang Chuang. And they also used the sword a lot. See, the handle sticking from behind his shoulder. They used straight sword a lot, which was actually very rare at that time. Because if you look at the Imperial Army, they used sabers, they used spears, but of course, in the first place, they were priests and monks. Yeah, the main concerns were of religious and philosophical nature, also health. Yeah. So when it came to fighting, they based their system of fighting on the same principles that they used in the rest of their activities. And this is the circulation of qi and the transformation of yin and yang, that we are invited to direct our body energy, our qi, to the sword, into the blade. And they call it projecting qi into the sword. Well, there was a very famous Tai Chi master Titian, right? So his students say that when he was demonstrating it, the whole blade will quiver violently. The sword will quiver violently from handle to tip. So this putting energy into the sword, putting the body energy, the energy of the mind and body, or putting chi into the sword, this is something which is, again, it's easy to talk about, but it's hard to do, right? Especially when you just start doing sword, learning sword. So, draw, for example, yeah, is analogous, in as analogous with ward off. Carry was rolled back. This one was interesting. I was just kind of to look a little bit because of these pictures, right? Because this one is stab, see, yeah? And this one is split, Leah. They look different because she's kind of moving there, right? And he's moving his hand to the right. But energetically, they're very similar because in both cases, you have this foot, then it goes to the yao. And again, what was said before me, this spoiling energy of the yao propels the sword or the hand forward.
When you start looking at the automatic response that a lot of guys have to asserting a superiority over a woman in a martial arts context, it's a really deep-bedded instinct socially in both Western society as well as Chinese society. Just this past month, there was a story in the archaeological press that was a reevaluation of an archaeological find from the 1800s. And it was a Viking tomb, a warrior that was exhumed, with a gorgeous set of armor. Helmet, shield, battle axe, sword, the remains of hunting dogs and horses, and a strategy game upon the chest, either chess or something like battle planning. And it was only within the past couple of months that a female archaeologist realized, an osteoarchaeologist, that this Viking warrior was a woman. This is your martial model that's been edited out. Same thing in China. In ancient China, the tomb of Madame Fu Hao, who was a consort and queen of the king of Shan, contained 130 bronze weapons. She wasn't just his consort, she was his warlord, she was his general. Men have a great deal of neural wiring and connections within each lobe of the brain, and very little going back and forth between the two hemispheres. Women are really well connected in terms of connecting the left and the right hemispheres. And they found through EEG studies that one of the areas where the two brains function very differently is in the area of spatial relations. Now, I've always taught Wujibu in terms of the feet parallel. The warrior told me, no. She said, for some women, angle the feet out, maybe 5 to 10 degrees. At the same time, I've got women in my club who say, no, that's not necessary. Another point, but this business about the negative and the positive reinforcement, the incautious male instructor's effort to correct or address a problem may be perceived by a female student as directed toward their persons and not the problem. The other thing, too, is that you have to remember that the occasional insecure male may exhibit diminished self-control in some situations, such as pushing hands when they feel threatened. So, once again, there are gender issues regarding aggression, defensiveness, things of that kind that you have to be aware of. But the same sort of prejudice exists here in North America, because so much of the basic assumptions we have in terms of methods of instruction are based upon teaching men. When you start looking at the role of gender in terms of martial arts, what Tai Chi and martial arts develop into in the future depends upon us. And whether we're able to do a better job than the people who taught us depends upon how well we can look at these issues and find our own way. Thank you.